Eno gye tuli kitokota Kyagulanyi Ssentamu Robert Bobi Wine ayagamba General Museveni nti nja kunyiya ekyalo nkunyiye n'ekibuga Uganda ajja kugikunyiya n'emitala mayanja ajja kukunyiyaayo ddala kituufu General Museveni atamiddwa wabuli wamu takyayagala genda mitala w'amayanja era yadde alina olukuŋŋaano genda mu America baamuyise yatiddeyo n'agamba bajja kunkwata leka siyinza kwetantala abo Abamerica baagala Kyagulanyi atule mu ntebe yange yaganye n'asindika Nabbanja ate Nabbanja bwe yasindise omusirikale we n'adduka n'agamba lekooti nange Uganda yantamadda nfunye opportunity kange nennoonye nange ku mikisa emindi nange neegaggawalireko kati nno tuba tukyali ku ebyo ate waka Uganda General Museveni ebintu byamutabuseeko dda okwekalakasa kw'abasuubuzi gye kumutuusiza ali mu kufeesa bufeesa ate no ku international scene abazungu ebigambo babivudde bamutabukidde dda bamugudde ate mutanyo yabagendese olwaleero tugenda kutandika n'omukyalo ono akuwulira eno talungu bagudde ku Museveni bwe abazungu yali baagala luke baagala ve mu ntebe bamukoye bamuyamidde batandika nakyebeja bambadde mu kabita yamanyi ono nga president Kyagulanyi kimutwali bwe yakusaga wayogera ku president musajja wandawo yamanyi wali mukwata dictator ati yamukwata yamunyweza bali sibiri yabadde babiri Kampala ndechanga changa mwawo yamanyi ati dictator mukwata nafu ati gwe mugwalikira ku bulungi yabana bazungu bakutulirwa mutino Kyagulanyi abakoze mu bazo kusobongo kati bazo kusaba naabwe bazo kukusaba naabwe era nga General Museveni sawa yonna wandu ogenda kulima ogenda kumpulira ogenda kunabira ebya kukugaga sio bitukira beko kwa simu bitukira ngaina ndo ngene ngene pamvese bitukira ngai washanyo nakamba onza bakanga linde chija just watch the space tutandike no muzungu ensonga tali bose bati makula uliza kali moyo neyiso ogenda kumanya ntino hatumba wangu zati nokukirawo very soon.
Students, I do apologize for my appearance today. I am quite ill. That does not excuse me from being able to be here with you today. So by way of introduction, we joyfully get to hear from Professor Sinjinja about strategic framework for social movements, a practical guide. This is going to be an incredibly useful and very, very implementable lecture. So be sure you're taking notes and be sure you're listening to our dear professor. Now, while we listen and we take in the information and we learn from Professor Sinjinja, I want you to think briefly about this quote by Buckminster Fuller. You never change things by fighting existing reality. To change something, build a new model that makes the existing reality, the existing model, obsolete. And what he means by this is you can't beat the reality that a dictator has built. You can't beat it. What you have to do is create a new reality that makes this reality obsolete. Nobody's going to continue living in a reality that is obsolete. So let's work together, my wonderful brothers and sisters, and build a reality that is obsolete, that makes this reality obsolete. I look forward to doing that with you, and I cannot wait to hear this wonderful lecture. President Sinjinja, I turn the time over to you, and thank you for your work in this.
Some of our students from Harvard University and other students are usually the activists from different institutions that look into the way to build a strategy that is practical to help us in moving forward. And so for the purposes and intention of our class this morning, this is going to help us to look into variable ways and guidelines, strategies, and themes that are going to help us how to build a better, beautiful revolution. I'll start off with a critical introductory questions. What are social movements? Okay. And how are these social movements built? Does everyone in your team understand the definition and purpose? Do we know the right strategic approach to use at each point in time about this social movement? Do we know what stage of the revolution are we in? What is our people power revolution? How do we define it? What is its context, goal, objectives? Where are we? At what point do we say we have arrived? At what point do we say we have succeeded? And at what point do we come to a realization that we have failed? And at what point do we step back and say that now we have the capacity and the determination to move forward? So those are the three critical questions as students of political science and civil education. I want you to keep that in your mind as we navigate through this class this morning and ask exactly these questions. But let us look at the resistance, the rebellion, and the revolution. What is resistance? What is a rebellion? What is a revolution? Okay, so these help us to understand that an opposition against an established authority or norm, usually small-scale protest to individual dissent. And so students, I'm going to walk you through quickly because this is, I always tell my students in my class that this is a death by PowerPoint. And so I'm going to be quickly and move on because there's so much to cover within our such a short limited time. And so resistance is an opposition. We resist against an established authority or a norm, usually on a small scale protest to an individual dissent. And we seek to overwhelm the existing system or status quo. Okay? And so a rebellion, a violent uprising against a government or authority, it encompasses both individual and a collective action, a precursor for a revolution, and it can be violent. It can be powerful. It can move mountains. It can reach our destiny. It can reveal the gist of the pain that the masses have suffered for so long. And then a revolution. Oh, students, this is a sudden, profound shift in power, triggered, that is the key word, triggered by a dissatisfactory group leading to a change or a political system. It can be violent, students, or it can be peaceful. And so I want you to keep in mind resistance, rebellion, and a revolution. Both are key to our revolution. Both are methods that can take out a dictator. Both are strategies that can remove a dictatorial regime that has killed, maimed, triggered, murdered, imprisoned, both on a large scale, started by peasants and farmers, both on a small scale, started by those dissatisfied by the status quo, both by a group of students tired, or by peaceful protesters marching with the flag up for peace and justice and freedom and democracy for all. And so These social movements are defined as a collective action. A collective action in what? It is a collective action in which the population gets alerted, educated, and mobilized to change power holders and society and to address social issues and restore value. And so I want you to walk with me through this. I want you to see the lens in which I am going with this. I am teaching you today that these social movements are defined as a collective action in which the population gets mobilized, gets ready to challenge power holders of a given society in addressing peaceful social change to restore moral values, democracy, and freedom. Okay, so 3 things to note that have occurred. There is a reduced citizen participation in decision-making and a need for revival of democracy through people power movements and organizations in state structures. The non-violent social movements, their intention is to preserve democracy and address these social issues through the people power systems that mobilize public opinion to uphold the universal values and tackle social issues. These empower citizens by shifting power from central elites to grassroots movements and network of people. Oh, students, this is really one of the key components of the value of our people power citizenry, to mobilize and get the central elites to grassroots networks through sensitization with a non-violent social movement intended to do what? 1, preserve democracy. 2, address social issues through the people power movements. The social movements, the purpose and goal are understood by all. And so we come to understand this, that it lies in a collective action, a shared vision. You do not need to convince me what your goal and objective is, because it lies under these 3 components of collective action, shared vision, and a commitment to pure justice for all. And so these help us to understand the true movement of social strength for us all. We have to understand these models that form strategic basis for the movement. The power hold model and the people power model. Now, listen attentively, colleagues. We have to understand these models into 2 categories: the power holder model and the people power model. You have to know who are the actors, how do they operate, how to disable them and to expose them. Okay, so that is where the two distinctions come. The power elite model suggests that a society is structured in a hierarchical pyramid. Here, this is where we get our elite, the wealthy, controlling state institutions, laws, social norms, often at the expense of society's welfare. And of course, in this category, we get a few wealthy individuals that possess significant influence and make decisions and policies that impact the nation. So these two sociologists had to say about this model. They are the elite, they are the educated, they are the engineers, the lawyers. And so we need this to play a key pivotal role and influence society in decisions making that impacts the nation. The people power model, what does it refer to? Now, students, pay attention to this. The people power model refers to the collective power of citizenry, whether directly or indirectly, who can influence the social and political change. In other words, this people power model employs the social movement theory of change. But the key pointers here, students, is the dominant systems, the norms and institutions. The movement's capacity is developed through comparing narratives, organizing mass protests, direct action, advocacy, building a grassroots movement, a base, leadership pipeline, the networks, the alliances, the grassroots of peasants, of students, education institutions, and civic engagement. Okay, and so this people power model utilizes the power to influence decision makers, to mobilize discontented communities by employing non-violent tactics like protests, demonstrations, civil disobedience, beyond traditional parliamentary methods. What do I mean by that? I mean these non-violent tactics have worked since history in the beginning, beyond the traditional lower methods that we have come to get used to. The power elite model. Who are the power elite model? Who are the main actors? These are the corporate elites. They influence policy, decisions, and laws that benefit their companies. Examples are owners of exhaustive large corporations, media moguls. These control information, dissemination. My students who are journalists joining us this morning, this is where they fall into this category. They work for popular political, non-biased social media influencers, and they are journalists to some of our media platforms. So they control information and they disseminate this information to influence public perception and discourse. Alternatively, the junta is also very key in doing this. Now, students, we come to the academic elites. These influence education systems, the academic culture, university professors, and curriculum developers, civic education engagements. So this is the category in which we all come in. Oh, students, guess what? We also have religious elites. These significantly influence popular opinions, practices, and beliefs in political and international contexts. For example, the imams, the priests, the pastors, the rabbis. We see this that happened in Congo Kinshasa. The Catholic body was pivotal in influencing the Kabila regime, in telling him, you can't come back to power, we're gonna massively send all our parish petitioners and all parishioners to go to the streets if you don't back down from the presidency. So they influence the status quo. They have power to influence the dynamics of the government. So this is where religious leaders, some of the religious dogmas have been bought off and compromised and bribed to disseminate information that is key to sway the government information and to propagate and sugarcoat what the models look like. Understanding power holders and exploring how they operate, tactics of control and their methods influence sources, strategic goals. The movement should set specific attainable objectives for systematic change, social justice and policy reform, aligning with its vision and values. The coalitions and alliances, these organizations can enhance the impact by forming large alliances similar to power holders collaborating with similar organizations and groups. And this is key to us in wanting our social movement, our strategies, lining well with the methods that we are pushing, squeezing the dictatorial regime to its knees. And so, how do we operate? How do we involve important leaders and grassroots foot soldiers to understand these tactics and how they operate? Concealing moral violations, employ a two-track system of government policies, crisis management when things slip up in the public than they are supposed to. Okay? Concealing the moral violations from becoming public. Think of these items that have occurred that follow under this category. Internalized obedience. What is this? The practice of keeping any issue out of public view and public consciousness. Oh, we don't have foot soldiers in Ugandan prisons. Oh, prisoners are treated very well. Oh, in Uganda, there's no kidnappings. There's no torture. Keep issues out of the spotlight and off the society's agenda. Keep controversial topics off society's agenda that cause people to take action. Oh, today, an influential clan leader has been shot dead. Oh, today, a pastoral bodyguard was shot in the dark of the night. Oh, today, a king's wedding is taking place. And so we keep issues that are political out of the spotlight to demonize the masses in forgetting what is the core value of their protest and their moral violation, to keep it behind and propagate the topics that are not time sensitive, to confuse the masses in letting them forget who they are. Keeping these violations out of the public's eye. Preserve the media hegemony over public information. Again, this is where my journalistic students come in. Refute the existence of the issue, sugarcoat it, fabricate the societal myths that describe the issue to the public in ways that are diametrically opposed to reality. Conjure up the threat of evils like communism, terrorism, and in order to instill this fear in the populace that this is a rebellion, these are protesters, they are not obeying the country at ease. And so you create these violations out of the public eye. But guess what? Thank goodness for the video, for the camera that captures all atrocities committed by the junta. And so we look at this as employ a two-track system of government policies. The official policies supported by those in power embody the values such as human rights, equality, freedom, and democracy, promoting justice and fairness, but serving as a front. The operative policies and beliefs and practices or policies that the government implements, often infringing on citizens' rights. Students, that's key word, infringing on citizens' rights, and can be upheld by power holders. And this helps us to understand and see how this goes on and on. And so we look at the crisis management. Power holders often employ a crisis management to justify unjust policies, revive demons that trigger events, to overcome public opposition by discrediting the population to support their policies. In other words, students, what I'm teaching you this morning is that unjust policies justified by creation of justification in myths, claiming these policies are unnecessary to combat great evil. Either they create new demons or bring existence ones back to life is the aim. They stage their trigger events and are used to secure public approval for new policies. And so these power holders overcome public opposition by initially ignoring the movement, then discrediting, destabilizing, and if necessary, reversing it. So they reverse public opinion, they discredit information by the opposition figures, and spin it to win public cheap popularity and confuse the masses. The movement aims to promote social change based on 4 things, students. Our movement and its aims and strategies bases its influence on freedom, democracy, justice, and human rights, gaining public support by proving that it adheres to these principles and challenges to those in oppositions and authority. This is the key. This is the key ingredient. Public reviews the differences between the official and the operative policies and show the power holders the moral violations for self-interest and expose this public. They keep the issue of moral violations in public spotlight, on society's agenda, on costly contested issues. They keep the issue on the power holders and policies on society's political agenda. They involve increasingly large portions of the public in programs that challenge the power holders, policies, and promote alternative visions and programs. They have an endgame strategy that once the vast majority of the public is on board, this mobilizes the institutions and the public to bring about change, even in the face of the central power holders and the movement's organization. And so this helps us to know that our organizations and its leadership should foster grassroots activists to promote a participatory democracy to serve national and regional values. And so this is what I want you to know. The People Power Movement and its subsidiary organizations are all about freedom for all, democracy for all, justice for all, respect for human rights, These key ingredients have gained public sympathy, have gained demonstrations worldwide, have challenged the status quo, and these four pyramids have removed dictators from office. And this is unique in helping us to understand where our social movements go. These movements can influence institutions such as government, corporations, educational systems, requiring organizations to work within the existing structures. And the only way to know what they are doing while advocating for change. The strategic nonviolence resistance can effectively challenge authority without alienating more people, as seen in the past civil rights movements. Adaptability, comrades, this is key. Power holders need to adjust to shifting conditions. Movements ought to follow suit, be adaptable, and change tactics as necessary. Some of these tactics may be broad, some of these tactics may be private, confidential, with a seal of secrecy. Everything doesn't have to be out. These tactics, you must study successful tactics used by power holders, including lobbying legislatures, face-to-face media campaigns, mold public perceptions. This is where my journalistic students come in, legal challenges, protest, demonstrations, court use to influence public perception and support for their causes. Many of my political science scholars were asking me, okay, People Power Movement lost its elections. Why did it go to court? People Power Movements and all opposition figures, why do they go to elections? If they know nothing is gonna change. This is your answer here. You have to study successful tactics and use all power holder strategies, including lobbying legislatures, face-to-face. Why does President Bobi Wine Kyagulanyi go to Europe? Meet political influencers face-to-face, media campaigns face-to-face, mold public perception face-to-face, legal challenges face-to-face, protest and demonstrations face-to-face, court use face-to-face, because, colleagues, all these help in influencing public perception to come to your rescue and help you in your advance of democracy and your revolution in supporting your cause. Strategic communication, utilize interpersonal communication, traditional media, social media effectively to craft compelling narratives. Comrades, this is again why we are in a revolution that is surviving, that is adapting, that is changing. Strategic communication is key in crafting your narratives, which is powerful individual use to justify their actions. Why do people power movement and organizations go to Twitter? Why do they go to social media? Resource mobilization, the sources of power include social, political, and economical capital. Movements require community support, volunteer recruitment, and fundraising is key to any success of any revolution. There has to be money. Whether it's coming in privately, in broad or public. Persistence and resilience, these power holders often resist change, requiring persistent movements that anticipate setbacks. People Power Revolution and all its subsidiary organizations anticipate setbacks. So we have to maintain resistance, resilience, and learn from our failures and get back on the table to strategize again and again and again. And so students, let's take a pause. Let's end here. In the last 5 minutes, we are gonna go to the moment of silence, and then we will continue. Take a drink of water, go to the bathroom if you need to, come back, and then we shall continue with our concluding remarks. We'll take a few minutes and take the time over to Dorcas to lead us through the silent moment. Take it over, Dorcas. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Sofa. Comrades, please let's share the link, because we still have an hour to go, and it is important for us to take this in. Thank you so much, Professor. Yes, we will be having a moment of silence. Comrades, please mute. And just before we do, I think we still have a minute or so to the moment of silence. To remind you, today's code has been shared in the chat. For those that are intending to get a certificate at the end, you obviously have got to show you are attending. So for every lecture, there is a code that is shared. However, do not worry, as long as you're doing the homework. So far, this has been the 4th session. So please, if you're behind, follow up on Facebook, do the assignments, and I am very sure Professor will still be generous enough to award you that certificate once all the homeworks have been submitted. And for us as a check, we will be sending you a code so that at the end you email us all the codes for the different sessions as a check. But of course, every day, every Saturday, we do check your attendance. Try and maintain the same name. If you're called Mr. Stone today, do not change it to Flower the next Saturday. So try and maintain the same name, the same Zoom name, because when you come in, you're allowed to change your name, but maintain it so that we know that Mr. Stone has come this Saturday, the following Saturday. Do not keep changing your Zoom name. Thank you. Yes, have one Zoom name to the end of May. The last session is 25th of May. Of course, this year. Yes, it's 10 sessions. So let's have a moment of silence, comrades. We will be having a moment of silence to. Oh, Professor, you need. Okay, I'll end your sharing. Because I think you are sharing. Yes, I will let you share once again. Yes, comrades, if we can all mute, thank you.
Okay, strategic framework or master action plan. These are developed by Bill Moyer. He was a strategist in the 80s. And so his movement action plan was the MAP, M-A-P, which offers a roadmap for organizers and activists. And it offers an excellent guide for movements aiming to reform. And so the movement action plan is a tool used to outline stages and advocacy rules of a successful social revolution movement. Social movements must adhere to non-violence, and the MAP provides the road that emphasizes the strategic plan and the power of collective action. It outlines 8 stages of social movements within the MAP. and I want you to pay attention to this because this is key in helping us dialogue and look into these MAP action plan assimilations. One, the power of social movements have demonstrated that their power in the past, and it anticipates that there will continue to be so. And so the central rule of the social movement is to target ordinary citizens who give power to power holders by consent. The main challenge is gaining majority support or people power who ultimately hold the power to preserve the status quo or create change. We have the progress value of social movements despite opposing the state or government to promote a better society based on progressive values. Again, students, we come back to the progressive values of social change as justice, freedom, democracy, and civil liberties or civil rights. And so these are the key ingredients in the progress of social values. Social justice versus vested interest. What is the vested interest in us, which is the real movement advocating for social justice, while those in power represents the vested interests? The grand strategy here is that social movement focuses on fostering participation in democracy to address injustices and social issues, emphasizing its importance in achieving these movement goals. And so success is a long-term process. I repeat this to you, students. Success is a long-term process achieved through a series of sub-goals rather than a big, giant event. In other words, social movements driven by passionate individuals are essential in shaping societies by challenging established norms and promoting meaningful change. What is the key word here? The key word here is driven by passionate individuals, charisma, enthusiasm. That is essential in challenging the establishment of the status quo. If we are to promote meaningful change, we have to be driven by the passion, by the strength, by the courage and the energy to move forward with a zeal in eradicating the junta and its horns. Oh, students, age the normal times. We have the quiet times that violates the human values, but these violations are often unnoticed. The silent genocide that is often unnoticed by the citizenry. The human rights, the freedoms, activists experience this difficult in mobilizing for change because so many times there are things that go unnoticed. Failure of existing institutions, intense public emotion and upset distress. Public realizes government violation of value and officials deceive and govern unlawfully. Activists work to amplify the inadequacy or the failure of existing institutions by exposing flaws and inefficiencies, justifying the need for change. And so sometimes comrades ask me, what are our opposition parliamentary members doing in parliament. They amplify those that want change, amplify the inadequacies or the failures of existing institutions by exposing the flaws and influences, by building a just cause. And so, intense by public emotion and upset, realize government policy and violations of beliefs and values. There is the public distress, officials deceive and govern unlawfully. In other words, in this stage to prove the failure of existing institutions, why are you fighting for decency, for democracy? Many renew local opposition groups use official channels, courts, government, offices, commissions, hearings, etc. to prove that they don't work. And so they become experts and they do research. So students, pay attention to this. We do all what we do so that we expose the inefficiencies that aren't working for the social masses of our given generation. And that is the key core existence of the failure of existing institutions. Stage 3, ripening of conditions. What does this mean? What does ripening conditions mean, students? This means recognition of problem and victims grows. Public sees victims' faces. More active local engagements of groups need pre-existing institutions, networks that are valuable to new movements. 20 to 30% of public opposes the power holder policies. And so this ripen the change due to public awareness, crises and social movements, successes relies on historical developments, discontinued populations and grassroots oppositions, which encourage discontent. They raise expectations and provide means for change. In other words, it is the pyramidical up-down movement of the protests that are yearning for this change, that want change, that want to better their lives, that adequately rely on the responsibility of those. Students, comrades, take off. What does the take off mean? Social movements take off this, gain public attention, and as widely discussed, movements gain visibility and attract more participants. They trigger diplomatic non-violent actions, /campaigns, actions to more public conditions and policies that violate human values, non-violent actions repeated around the country, problems of social media agenda. And so these are the stages of the movement. Here, the new social movement rapidly takes off by having a 40% of public presence that opposes current policies and conditions. They gain public attention and widely discuss the transforming previously unrecognized issues into the widely discussed social issues. And so this stage 4 is paramount to a revolution and its movement to take center stage by taking off. Dramatic non-violent campaigns and protests. none around the country. Movements that gain visibility and attracts more participants. The campaign starts with a publicized incident, then escalates into a non-violent action through protest, campaigns and rallies, culminating in a larger rallies and civil disobedience in local communities nationwide. And so the question for you is, where is our revolution? At what stage is it on now? Is it stage 1? Is it stage 2? Is it stage 4? The answer lies in what I am teaching you this morning. Stage 5, identify crises of powerlessness, perception of failure, see goals unachieved, see power holders unchanged, see numbers down at demonstrations, despair, hopelessness, burnout, dropout, seems movement is ending, emergence of negative rebel. So these activists confront challenges and setbacks, all disillusionment. Okay? In other words, students, activists recognize that the struggle is an ongoing and that the power structures resist change. As the power dynamics resist change, activists recognize that the struggle must go on. You must not give up the fight. You must not sink into the colossum of despair. You must not sink into the colossum of hopelessness. You cannot despair into the colossum of burnout. You cannot sink into the colossum of dropout. You cannot sink into the colossum of thinking that the revolution is not going to go anywhere. It can't be an overnight change to see rapid success of change. Ladies and gentlemen, I beg to submit, for any revolution to meet its objectives and goals, it must meet resistance. Sometimes they must have goals unachieved. Sometimes they must be in the crisis of powerlessness. But it must be continually and ongoing, regardless of the negativity of the emergencies that may blossom here and there. And so that is the perception of failure within the context and the dynamics of our revolution. Stage 6, the majority of public support and its opinion. Okay, here majority oppose present conditions. These present conditions and power holder policies show how the problem and policies affect all sectors of society. They involve mainstream citizens and institutions in addressing the problem put on political agenda, problem put to enter counter with alternatives, counter each with new power holder strategy, demonology versus the power holder in promoting its public fear and alternatives in activism, promote a paradigm shift, not just reforms, but they trigger events that happen in reenacting stage 4 for a short period. In other words, the movement gains a broader public backing. Activists continue to educate. This is why we wake up early morning on the US side and on the European side to educate, to mobilize, to empower the majority, the silent majority, and those of the mainstream citizens and institutions in addressing these issues and these problems. Oh, comrades, stage 7, success. How do we define success of a revolution and a social movement? How do we do that? Extend successes, even stronger civil rights laws, oppose attempts at backlash, promote a paradigm shift, recognize, celebrate successes. So achieving specific goals for policy changes marks this stage. Where is our revolution? Is it on stage 7? The movement celebrates its victories, but continues to remain vigilant. Let me repeat this. The movement of our revolution celebrates its successes and victories, but continues to look at the victor's crown. And hence the song Tuliyamba Lengule, the celebration, the pain, the tears of joy, the grief misery of the unknown, the tortured, the imprisoned. All that makes the movement and its struggle to achieve a higher prize continues to make strategic changes. Stage 8, continuing the struggle, extend those successes, even stronger civil rights, oppose attempts at backlash, but work to remain and maintain the gains and prevent backsliding and address new challenges. In the Ugandan context today, ladies and gentlemen, I beg to submit that the successes that the revolution has built, sometimes we see a little bit of cracks here by the little peanuts that have been bribed by the few, wanting to set our revolution backsliding, but we resist to backslide. We continue to address the new challenges and to maintain the prize and the victory through which takes us to where we need to be. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I ask you a question. Knowing what you know now, what is your role? What is your role as a people power revolutionary activist? And how can your role be effective? Ladies and gentlemen, I beg to submit to you that your role is in 4 areas, each contributing to the movement's effectiveness. Successful social movements require harmonious collaboration, guided by the movement's needs, objectives, and circumstances. Keyword, needs. In this role, you as a citizen, you as an activist, you must act as the consciousness of society. Effective citizens say yes to society's core values. In other words, the required skills are effective communication, community organizing, and civic engagement. Those are key influential words: effective communication, community organizing, and civic engagement. In other words, this articulates a vision for the good society by raising awareness, engaging in dialogue, advocating for change. You achieve respect by accepting and the legitimacy in the eyes of the ordinary citizens as they align with social values that are morally acceptable, withstand power-horde attempts to discredit the movement. In the Ugandan context, in a Ugandan case study, we have seen few individuals that are putting the revolution to discredit the movement and its victories, and not wanting the movement to be put into the pivot of its prize and goals. Reduces potential for violent attitudes and actions within the movement. In other words, ineffective rebel change agent promotes a utopian idea without engaging in grassroots struggle, seeking systematic change, a paradigm shift to reform symptoms without addressing the root cause. In other words, what I mean here is an inactive activist promotes a utopian idea without engaging the grassroots struggle, seeking a systematic change that puts reform as a symptom without addressing the root cause. Again, that's what we have been seeing today in Ugandan context right now, by few individuals promoting their utopian ideas of justification of why they did what they did, without addressing what the root cause was. Why, what, when, why, where, when, and how. So, that is your role. Knowing your role, you must be a change agent. Comrades, students, friends, activists advocate for gradual change, enhancing existing structures through policy improvements, legislative adjustments, practical fixes. They require institutional support, patience, and consensus-oriented approach. They serve as an open system, allowing flexible opinions. Required skills, negotiations, lobbying, policy analyses are among the skills needed. All of you comrades listening to me this morning, I want you to acquire these skills of negotiation, lobbying, policy analyses, advocate for gradual change, policy improvements, legislative adjustments, and practical fixes that help to move the revolution forward. An ineffective labor change agent promotes, again, these utopian ideas that don't move us anywhere. So, knowing your role as a change agent, as a change advocate, is to be patient, but to be a consensus-oriented activist. Then you serve into a system that allows flexible opinion, that help you to understand in what you need to do. Okay? And so, students, as we come to an end here, again, you have to be a reformer. Who is a reformer? I teach my students of history and political science class the Italian Reformation, the French Revolution. Simply protesting is not enough. I repeat, simply protesting is not enough. In this role, you as an advocate, you as an activist, you must also serve as a social change agent. educating and organizing the public to oppose current policies and look for constructive but positive solutions. Constructive but positive solution. This role supports gradual change while working to enhance the structures that are in place. You propose a policy improvement, legislative adjustments. For my students that are in law, you support a gradual change while working to enhance the structures that are in place. You propose a policy improvement, laws, legislative adjustments, and practical fixes, all of which necessitate institutional support in addition to being patient and having a pragmatic approach into a consensus-oriented structure. Serve as an open system, providing information to the public while gaining knowledge, keyword, while gaining knowledge through civic engagement, through civil society literacy, through education. And you gain this knowledge from these discussions within the public and power holder and decision makers, allowing the public opinions to be flexible. Required skills, coalition building, legal competency, research are among the things that are necessary. And so, in closing, students and fellow comrades, may I beg to say that your role as an activist, as a promoter for peace, as a builder for human rights is participate for social change, create an avenue for knowledge, seek learning, gain knowledge, have a proactive approach, be patient, continue to desire for change in liberating your country by getting involved in the revolution and the grassroots movement. And so, students, my question for you for today's assignment is, you're gonna write a one essay paper. But before I give that to you, I want to read to you Martin Luther King, that leaders must be able to identify individuals who can play big roles, when to balance these roles and how to switch these roles, and how to be able to identify when individuals become ineffective in their roles. You as leaders, you must look and identify leaders in your local grassroots movement, and you must learn to balance your roles and how to switch between those roles. And you must be able to identify when those individuals become ineffective, then when to switch them and release them from their obligation. Okay, Martin Luther King is one of my favorite heroes.
Mubiwulira enteekateeka nga weeri yakujjako nakyemalira General Yoweri Kaguta Museveni omulimu omunene gwe tulina era bwe buvunaanyizibwa bwe twewa bwe buvunaanyizibwa tulina okutuukiriza nze naawe eggwanga lino lyaffe era nga twalanza tutereereza okujjako ffe abaana baffe bagenda kuwangaalira wano abazzukulu baffe emirembe gyonna ekinaddako kati n'okukola ensi eno ng'ejja kubasobozesa okweyagalira wano ku jjajjaabwe ng'ejja kubasobozesa okubanga basobola okukola bwe kibakola bakikolera wano okulakulanya Uganda yaabwe nga tebajje mu majibu kagenda kubyeyo wabula nga banyumirwa nnyo ku bantu ewaka wasinga okuwoma ate buvanne gye budda wali wasinga waka bulungi ng'otamba n'ogenda wa nyina tofuuka wamwe olala okuddayo ewaka wali wama wasinga obulungi wasinga eddembe n'emirembe kale eggwanga ffe Uganda lwekyo tulina tulina okuyiteereza tulunda kyemalira katinja ke ekitegeera tuddemu tutambule bulungi bada nnyo muna bali kumbali kubaako Mukama Katonda musaba akumire tujja kufuna kujjambira ebigambo baana bakiriza lwabyo ndamuleka batalimirako